Elder Zephyr, the ethereal collective, floated in the observation chamber of the high spire, watching through the crystalline walls as another of their ancient cities plunged into crushing depths of their dying gas giant homeworld. The graceful structure that had housed 50,000 souls for over 3 centuries tumbled end over end, its delicate gossamer framework crumpling like tissue paper as it fell toward the planet's increasingly violent core. The sight never became easier to witness. Each falling city represented not just lives lost, but millennia of culture, art, and scientific achievement being swallowed by their own world betrayal. The ethereals had evolved in the gentle upper atmospheres of gas giants, their bodies adapted to low gravity and thin air. Their entire civilization built around floating cities that danced through the clouds like living jewels. Status report on the core instability, Zephyr requested from Dr. Wisp, the collective's leading atmospheric scientist, though he dreaded the answer. Dr. Wisp's translucent form flickered with the patterns of deep concern that his species used to express overwhelming distress. The gravitational fluctuations are increasing exponentially. Our graviton stabilizers can't compensate for the magnetic field disruptions. We estimate complete planetary collapse within 6 months. 6 months. Zephyr closed his large, luminous eyes and tried to process the magnitude of the disaster. Their homeworld of Arios had supported ethereal civilization for over 50,000 years, its stable atmospheric layers providing the perfect environment for their delicate, air-adapted physiology. Now their own planet was killing them with increasing gravitational chaos that their floating cities couldn't survive. How many have we lost? Zephyr asked, though the numbers haunted his dreams every night. 17 cities in the past week alone, Dr. Wisp reported, his voice barely a whisper. That's nearly 2 million souls. The refugees from the outer atmospheric layers are overwhelming our remaining stable platforms. Through the observation chamber, Zephyr could see the desperate evacuation efforts taking place across the remaining floating cities. Ethereal transport pods moved frantically between platforms, carrying families and essential equipment from the most unstable regions to whatever temporary shelter could be found in the increasingly chaotic atmosphere. But there weren't enough stable zones left to house everyone. The ethereals were dying not from any external enemy, but from their own world's geological betrayal. The planet's core, stable for millions of years, had begun generating magnetic anomalies that created gravitational waves powerful enough to tear apart anything not anchored to solid ground. And the ethereals had never needed solid ground, until now. Send humanitarian requests to all nearby civilizations, Zephyr instructed weakly, knowing how pathetic their options were. Perhaps someone can spare emergency shelters and transport ships for refugees. Ambassador MYST, whose gossamer wings had been damaged during the last evacuation, activated the quantum communication array that could reach neighboring star systems. Her transmission was humble, desperate, and heartbreakingly modest in its requests. To any civilized species receiving this transmission, the ethereal collective faces complete extinction due to planetary core destabilization. Our atmospheric cities are being destroyed by gravitational fluctuations that our technology cannot counter. We request basic life support equipment, temporary shelters suitable for low-gravity atmospheric beings, and transport assistance for displaced populations estimated at 12 million individuals. The message continued with technical specifications about ethereal environmental needs, the precise atmospheric mixtures they required, the minimal gravity levels their fragile bodies could tolerate, and the specialized life support systems that could keep them alive outside their natural environment. We offer our advanced atmospheric manipulation technology, weather control systems, and 3,000 years of gas giant research data in exchange for any assistance you can provide, MYST concluded, her voice carrying the weight of an entire civilization's desperation. The transmission went out through quantum relay networks, reaching dozens of neighboring species within their local galactic region. The ethereals waited with a patient display of beings who understood they were probably going to die, but felt obligated to try every possible avenue for survival. They were fragile beings adapted to environments that most galactic species couldn't even visit, let alone inhabit. Their delicate physiology and specialized environmental needs made them difficult to help even for well-intentioned neighbors. They expected limited charity from other species, maybe enough emergency supplies to keep some survivors alive in makeshift refugee camps until more permanent solutions could be negotiated. Their databases contained information about every known civilization within communication range. Most were a peaceful species like themselves, focused on research and cultural development rather than large-scale engineering projects. Some were powerful enough to help, but historically indifferent to the problems of others. Then there were the humans, listed in their files as inhabitants of a Class XI death world called Sol-3. The ethereals knew almost nothing about them beyond their recent achievement of faster-than-light travel and their classification as Deathworlders, beings who had evolved in environments so hostile that survival itself was a constant struggle. These humans, Zephyr Muse or Ambassador MYST, as they reviewed potential sources of aid. They are from a dangerous world. They probably have experience with emergency situations. Perhaps, MYST replied doubtfully. But Deathworlders typically focus on their own survival. They might understand our crisis, but they're unlikely to have resources to spare for refugees from a completely different type of environment. The ethereals assumed these humans would offer little beyond sympathy, maybe some basic supplies or technical advice about emergency shelter construction. After all, beings who spend their lives fighting to survive on hostile worlds probably had limited capacity for large-scale humanitarian projects. They had no idea they just contacted a species that treated refugee crises as engineering problems requiring permanent solutions, and that human compassion took the form of overwhelming industrial response designed to eliminate suffering through superior technology and construction capability. The message raced through space toward Sol-3, carrying the desperate plea of a dying civilization to beings who would interpret humanitarian crisis as construction project requiring immediate deployment of industrial-scale solutions. Admiral Rebecca Thompson sat in the Strategic Operations Center at Earth Command, surrounded by holographic displays that monitored humanitarian crises across known space. The facility operated as humanity's primary coordination hub for large-scale engineering projects, refugee assistance, and what the military classified as civilization reconstruction operations. When the ethereal distress call arrived through automated monitoring systems, it immediately triggered priority alerts across her command center. We're receiving a planetary evacuation scenario from the Outer Rim, announced Commander Lisa Foster from her station, the Crisis Analysis Hub. Complete atmospheric civilization facing extinction due to homeworld collapse. Estimated 12 million refugees requiring immediate resettlement. Thompson immediately accessed a full crisis assessment on her command console, reviewing the technical data that painted a clear picture of an entire species losing their ability to survive in their natural environment. The ethereals weren't just facing a temporary disaster. They were experiencing the complete destruction of their civilization's foundation. This is exactly the kind of situation our reconstruction protocols were designed to handle, Thompson said to her staff, activating the emergency response systems that would mobilize humanity's most advanced engineering capabilities. We're dealing with atmospheric specialists who need completely new worlds built to their environmental specifications. The human approach to refugee crises was fundamentally different from anything most galactic civilizations could imagine. While other species focused on providing temporary relief and basic survival supplies, humanity had developed comprehensive reconstruction capabilities specifically designed to rebuild entire civilizations from the ground up. Colonel William Davis, Thompson called to her engineering commander, who was already reviewing deployment options at his strategic planning station. We have an entire civilization losing their homeworld. I want the 4th Engineering Fleet ready for immediate deployment within 12 hours. Davis activated his communication links to Lunar Construction Base, Mars Engineering Command, and the Outer System industrial complexes where humanity's largest engineering projects were coordinated. All construction battalions, this is Colonel Davis. Priority deployment authorized. We're implementing full planetary reconstruction protocols for atmospheric-dependent refugees. The 4th Engineering Fleet represented humanity's most specialized civilization-building capability, 500 vessels including mobile shipyards, atmospheric processors, planetary engineering platforms, and enough construction equipment to build habitable worlds from bare rock. These weren't military ships. They were industrial platforms designed for the kind of large-scale construction project that most species considered theoretically impossible. President Jennifer Miller received the emergency briefing at the White House within 2 hours of the initial crisis assessment, surrounded by her cabinet who treated refugee reconstruction projects as standard components of American humanitarian policy. What are we looking at? Miller asked Secretary of Engineering Patricia Ross during the secure briefing. Complete civilization displacement. Russ replied, activating displays that showed the scale of construction required. 12 million beings requiring atmospheric environments that don't exist on any known habitable worlds. We'll need to build them from scratch. Miller's authorization was immediate and comprehensive. Operation New Horizon is approved. Complete planetary reconstruction and permanent resettlement for the entire ethereal population. Use whatever resources are necessary to build them a better civilization than the one they are losing. The authorization included deployment of humanity's most advanced terraforming technology, atmospheric engineering systems that could create custom environments for any known species, and construction capabilities that could build floating cities in any atmosphere from gas giants to modified terrestrial worlds. Standard Refugee Protocol. Thompson announced during the Fleet Commander's briefing that would coordinate the largest humanitarian engineering project in human history. When a civilization loses their world, we build them a better one. That's not charity, that's basic human decency applied through superior technology. Captain Robert Hayes prepared the mobile shipyards of the asteroid belt construction yards, overseeing the deployment of industrial platforms that could manufacture entire cities while traveling through hyperspace. His vessels carried the fabrication systems necessary to build floating metropolitan areas customized for ethereal physiology and cultural needs. Standard atmospheric reconstruction package. Hayes announced to his construction teams, "We're building 3 complete worlds with redundant safety systems, advanced gravitational controls, and enough expansion capability to support population growth for the next 1,000 years." Major Patricia Brooks coordinated the terraforming specialists at the Mars Atmospheric Engineering Center, preparing teams that could modify planetary environments with the precision necessary to support fragile atmospheric life forms. Her specialists had spent decades learning to create custom environments for human colonies in hostile locations. These ethereals need very specific atmospheric conditions, Brooks explained to her engineering teams. Low gravity, precise gas mixtures, controlled weather patterns. We're basically building them luxury planets designed to their exact specifications. To humans, refugee crises weren't temporary problems requiring charity and sympathy. They were reconstruction projects requiring new civilizations to be built from scratch using industrial-scale engineering solutions that eliminated the underlying causes of displacement. Commander Diana Wells coordinated the logistics analysis that would guide the construction project, processing requirements for building multiple worlds simultaneously while maintaining supply lines across hundreds of light years. We're looking at the largest construction project in human history, but it's well within our industrial capacity. The human fleet that prepared to depart for ethereal space carried enough construction capability to build entire solar systems from raw materials. To the engineers and construction specialists preparing the mission, this was routine work scaled up to handle a species-wide emergency. Admiral Thompson reviewed the final deployment orders with satisfaction. The human response was mobilizing with the efficiency of industrial workers tackling a large construction contract, because that's exactly what this was, building better homes for people who'd lost theirs. Elder Zephyr floated in the emergency command center of the last stable ethereal city, monitoring long-range sensors for any sign of the modest humanitarian response he hoped their desperate plea might generate. Around him, his advisors worked frantically to coordinate the ongoing evacuation of their collapsing homeworld, moving millions of refugees between the few remaining stable atmospheric platforms. Any response to our distress calls? Zephyr asked Dr. Whisk, who was managing communications with their few remaining orbital facilities. Limited replies so far, Whisk reported wearily. The Peaceful Alliance offered to accept 5,000 refugees in temporary camps. The Crystal Federation sent sympathy and promised to consider our request at their next parliamentary session. The agricultural worlds offered emergency food supplies for short-term relief. Zephyr nodded with grim acceptance. The responses were typical of galactic humanitarian assistance, well-meaning but inadequate for the scale of their crisis. Perhaps they could save a few thousand individuals, but the ethereal civilization itself was doomed to extinction. "So, we're detecting massive hyperspace distortions approaching the system," announced Navigator Drift from the sensor station, his translucent form flickering with confusion patterns. "The readings are unprecedented." Through the command center's observation walls, Zephyr could see the first signs of arrival, points of light that grew brighter as vessels dropped out of hyperspace with mathematical precision. But these weren't the small refugee transports or emergency supply ships he'd been expecting. Instead, the largest construction fleet in galactic history materialized around their dying homeworld, filling space with industrial vessels that dwarf anything an ethereal experience. The ships moved with purposeful coordination, immediately beginning systematic surveys of the entire star system with sensor arrays that could map planets down to the molecular level. Admiral Thompson's flagship Constructor Asterisk emerged from hyperspace like a floating city made of metal and determination. The massive engineering vessel was larger than most ethereal floating cities, its hull covered with construction equipment, manufacturing facilities, and atmospheric processing systems that could terraform entire worlds. "How many ships?" Zephyr whispered, staring at sensor displays that showed over 500 distinct contacts deploying across their star system with industrial efficiency. "The computers are still counting," Dr. Wisp replied in amazement. "They are establishing orbital positions around every planet and moon in our system. Whatever they are planning, it requires complete control of local space." Admiral Thompson's voice cut through their communication channels with professional authority that spoke of tremendous experience in large-scale construction projects. "Ethereal Command, this is Admiral Rebecca Thompson of the Terran Engineering Fleet. We received your humanitarian assistance request, and we're here to provide permanent resettlement solutions, beginning planetary construction operations immediately." The transmission was direct, efficient, and completely unlike the careful diplomatic language that characterized most galactic humanitarian responses. There were no committees to consult, no bureaucratic delays, no requests for additional meetings. Just professional engineers announcing their intention to solve the problem through overwhelming application of superior technology. "Admiral Thompson," Zephyr responded, still trying to process the scale of what he was witnessing. "We appreciate your response, but we only requested temporary humanitarian aid, emergency shelters, and refugee transport assistance." "This is humanitarian aid, Elder Zephyr," Thompson replied matter-of-factly. "We're implementing full planetary reconstruction protocols. When a civilization loses their homeworld, we build them better ones. That's standard refugee assistance procedure." Before Zephyr could respond, the human fleet began deploying with systematic efficiency that transformed their star system from a disaster zone into an active construction site. Captain Robert Miller established orbital construction platforms around 3 different worlds, deploying manufacturing facilities that could build entire cities while processing raw materials from asteroid mining operations. The scale was overwhelming. Human engineering vessels began atmospheric surveys of every potentially habitable world within 200 light-years, using sensor technology that could analyze planetary environments in hours rather than the years such surveys normally required. Major Patricia Brooks deployed atmospheric manipulation systems that could create ethereal-compatible environments on previously uninhabitable planets. Her teams worked with industrial equipment that treated planetary atmospheric engineering like routine maintenance work. Environmental analysis complete for Kepler 438b, Brooks reported during her briefing to the construction coordinators. Planet requires significant atmospheric modification, gravitational adjustment, and weather control systems. Standard terraforming package will make it suitable for ethereal habitation within 6 months. The ethereals watched in stunned silence as human forces treated their extinction-level crisis like a construction project requiring proper planning and adequate resources. The beings who had expected limited charity were witnessing industrial-scale engineering that could reshape entire worlds. Commander William Foster coordinated the deployment of mobile cities, prefabricated urban complexes that could house millions of beings while permanent worlds were being constructed. "Temporary housing platforms are being assembled in stable orbit around Ethereal Prime," he announced. "Each platform can support 500,000 individuals with full life support and cultural facilities." The human approach was methodical and overwhelming. They didn't just offer temporary shelter while the ethereals figured out long-term solutions. They immediately began building permanent new civilizations using technology that made their current crisis look like a minor inconvenience. Captain Diana Wells led the resource acquisition teams that began processing raw materials from uninhabited systems, converting asteroids and dead planets into construction materials for building new ethereal homeworlds. Standard resource extraction protocols are in effect. We have enough raw materials in this sector to build 12 complete worlds with full atmospheric control systems. Elder Zephyr realized that his modest request for emergency aid had summoned beings who approach humanitarian crises as engineering problems requiring permanent solutions implemented through superior industrial capability. The humans hadn't come to manage refugees. They'd come to eliminate the concept of displacement by building better civilizations than the ones being lost. The humans implemented what they called comprehensive resettlement protocols with a systematic efficiency of industrial engineers tackling the largest construction project in galactic history. Major Lisa Johnson stood in the Atmospheric Engineering Command Center aboard the terraforming vessel World Builder coordinating operations that were simultaneously modifying the atmospheres of 3 different planets to meet ethereal specifications. Atmospheric composition analysis complete for new areas, Johnson reported to construction coordinators during the daily briefing. We're implementing full atmospheric replacement on a planetary scale. Current progress, oxygen-nitrogen base established, trace gas integration at 60%, gravitational field adjustments proceeding on schedule. The scale of what the humans were attempting defied everything the ethereals understood about planetary engineering. Johnson's teams weren't just modifying existing atmospheres, they were completely rebuilding planetary environment from the ground up, creating custom worlds designed specifically for ethereal physiology and cultural needs. We're not just relocating you, Johnson explained to a group of amazed ethereal observers who were touring the terraforming operations. We're building you an entirely new civilization with improved infrastructure, redundant safety systems, and environmental controls that will prevent the kind of core instability that destroyed your original homeworld. Captain David Wilson coordinated the construction of floating cities using human engineering scaled up to support millions of beings. His construction platforms worked around the clock, assembling urban complexes that dwarfed anything in ethereal experience while incorporating their aesthetic preferences and cultural requirements. City Platform Alpha is ahead of construction schedule, Wilson announced during his status report to Admiral Thompson. We're using automated assembly systems that can build residential complexes faster than traditional methods by a factor of 50. Each platform will house 2 million ethereals with full cultural facilities, research laboratories, and recreational areas. The human construction systems operated with mechanical precision that turned city building into industrial manufacturing. Massive fabrication plants assembled building components, while swarms of construction robots worked in perfect coordination to create urban environments tailored specifically for atmospheric-adapted beings. Dr. Patricia Hayes led the environmental systems teams that created perfect atmospheric conditions tailored to ethereal biological requirements. Her atmospheric processes worked like planetary-scale life support systems, maintaining precise chemical balances across entire worlds. Environmental parameters are holding steady across all construction zones, Hayes reported while monitoring atmospheric readings from orbit. We're maintaining the exact gas mixtures, pressure levels, and gravitational conditions that ethereal physiology requires. These worlds will be more stable than their original homeworld ever was. The operation proceeded with industrial efficiency that amazed even experienced human engineers. Automated construction systems assembled cities faster than the ethereals could process what they were witnessing. Entire metropolitan areas appeared in days rather than the decades such construction would normally require. Commander William Foster coordinated the logistics that supported the most complex construction project in human history. His teams managed resource flows, personnel deployment, and supply chains that spanned multiple star systems while maintaining perfect coordination between hundreds of construction sites. 3 worlds under construction simultaneously, Foster announced during the weekly logistic briefing. New areas will support 5 million ethereals with room for population expansion. Haven Prime is designed for cultural preservation with advanced research facilities. Sanctuary is being built as an industrial center with manufacturing capabilities. The human approach was comprehensive in ways that left ethereal observers speechless. They weren't just building new homes. They were constructing an entire civilization that incorporated everything the ethereals value while adding improvements they'd never imagined possible. Major Robert Turner led the safety systems integration teams that built redundant protection measures into every aspect of the new worlds. Each planet has multiple backup systems for atmospheric control, gravitational stability, and emergency evacuation. We're making sure these worlds can handle any conceivable disaster. The construction robots that assembled the floating cities worked with precision that looked like choreographed dance performances. Thousands of machines moved through three-dimensional space, each one knowing exactly where every other unit was located, building structures that incorporated ethereal architectural preferences with human engineering reliability. Captain Jennifer Ross coordinated the cultural preservation aspects of the construction project, ensuring that human efficiency didn't overwhelm ethereal traditions and aesthetic preferences. We're building cities that feel like home to them, not human settlements with ethereal residents. The atmospheric processes created environments so precisely calibrated that ethereal children could play in open air without any life support equipment. The artificial weather system could generate the gentle atmospheric currents that ethereal culture used for artistic expression and recreational activities. Within 4 months, the homeless ethereals found themselves living in purpose-built worlds that were safer, more beautiful, and more technologically advanced than their original homeworld had ever been. The floating cities incorporated artistic elements that celebrated ethereal culture while providing infrastructure that could support their civilization for millennia. Lieutenant Commander Diana Brooks filed progress reports that documented the transformation of an entire species from refugees to inhabitants of the most advanced worlds in their sector of the galaxy. Construction completion rate exceeds all projections. Population resettlement proceeding ahead of schedule. Quality of life indicators show significant improvement over pre-disaster baselines. The humans had treated the ethereal refugee crisis like an engineering problem requiring permanent solutions implemented through superior industrial capability. The result was 3 complete worlds that represented the pinnacle of atmospheric civilization design, built specifically for beings who had thought their species was facing extinction. Elder Zephyr toured the completed cities with wonder at what human compassion looked like when applied through overwhelming technological superiority and unlimited construction resources. 6 months after completion of humanity's largest construction project in galactic history, Elder Zephyr floated through the crystal gardens of New Areos aboard the atmospheric transport Gentle Current marveling at the 3 complete worlds that had been built specifically for ethereal civilization. Each planet represented the pinnacle of atmospheric engineering, designed with technology that exceeded their original homeworld's capabilities in every measurable way. The environmental controls are remarkable, Zephyr observed to Dr. Wisp, who accompanied him on the inspection tour. Through the transport's transparent walls, he could see floating cities that sparkled like jewels in the carefully engineered atmosphere, their gossamer structures dancing through controlled wind currents that had been designed to provide both transportation and artistic expression. Dr. Wisp consulted his atmospheric readings with continuing amazement. The humans didn't just rebuild our civilization, they improved it. These worlds have triple redundant safety systems, weather control that can prevent any natural disaster, and atmospheric composition so precisely calibrated that our children are healthier than any generation in our recorded history. The transformation was comprehensive in ways that still left ethereal scientists speechless. New Areos housed their cultural centers and artistic communities in floating cities that incorporated traditional ethereal architecture while adding human engineering innovations. Haven Prime served as a research and educational hub, with atmospheric laboratories that could simulate any known environmental condition. Sanctuary functioned as their industrial center, manufacturing goods for trade with other civilizations using technology that made them economically independent for the first time in millennia. Admiral Rebecca Thompson met Elder Zephyr at the Joint Human Ethereal Administration Center that coordinated ongoing operations across all 3 worlds. The facility was a marvel of cooperative engineering, human industrial efficiency combined with ethereal aesthetic sensibilities to create administrative spaces that were both functional and beautiful. Admiral Thompson, Zephyr said during their final formal meeting in her office overlooking the bustling atmospheric traffic of New Areos, I need to address something that continues to amaze our entire species. When we sent that desperate plea for aid 6 months ago, we expected temporary refugee camps and basic survival supplies. Thompson smiled with the expression of someone who'd heard similar comments from grateful species many times before. Elder Zephyr, when Earth encounters refugee crises, we build permanent solutions. Temporary camps just create permanent problems that require ongoing resources and never actually solve the underlying issues. This is simply how we define humanitarian assistance. She activated a holographic display showing human refugee assistance operations across the galaxy, dozens of worlds where displaced populations have been given new homes that exceeded their original living conditions. Every human colony has experience with displacement, hostile environments, and the need to rebuild civilization from scratch. We apply that experience at industrial scale when other species face similar challenges. The casual way Thompson discussed rebuilding entire civilizations as routine humanitarian work continued to amaze galactic observers. What other species considered unprecedented engineering miracles, humans classified as standard refugee assistance protocols. The transformation was indeed complete. The ethereal collective had gone from facing extinction to inhabiting the most advanced atmospheric worlds in their sector of the galaxy. Their new homes incorporated safety features that made the disasters that destroyed their original homeworld impossible, while providing living conditions that exceeded their species' most optimistic projections. But the implications extended far beyond ethereal space. Word of humanity's approach to humanitarian assistance had spread throughout civilized space, creating a new understanding of what aid actually meant when applied by beings with unlimited industrial capacity and the will to use it. Captain Robert Miller, now commanding the permanent human engineering presence in ethereal space, reviewed the requests that arrived daily at his headquarters. The Mineral Collective is facing habitat collapse on their asteroid homes. The Garden Worlds report environmental degradation from industrial accidents. The Deep Ocean Alliance needs new habitats after their underwater cities were destroyed by seismic activity. Each request was processed through human engineering channels and handled by specialists who approach displacement crises as construction projects requiring permanent solutions. The galaxy was learning that human aid meant elimination of the underlying problems rather than temporary management of their symptoms. Major Lisa Johnson, coordinating the expanding human humanitarian network, filed reports that showed the scope of what had become a new model for galactic assistance. Current deployment: 4 to 7 human construction teams handling displacement crises across 23 sectors. Average completion time: 6 months for complete civilization reconstruction. Success rate: 100%. The economic implications were staggering. Human engineering companies specializing in refugee resettlement found themselves with more business than they could handle, while the civilizations they'd helped became prosperous trading partners rather than permanent charity cases. Other species facing displacement began specifically requesting human-scale resettlement assistance, learning that humanity's industrial capacity included constructing entire worlds for displaced populations as routine humanitarian work. The requests came with new terminology: permanent solutions, comprehensive reconstruction, and civilization upgrades. Commander William Foster, overseeing the cultural integration aspects of human humanitarian work, observed the broader changes taking place. We're not just solving individual crises anymore. We're changing how the galaxy thinks about disaster response. Species are starting to expect permanent solutions rather than temporary management. Dr. Patricia Hayes, leading the technological transfer programs that accompanied human reconstruction projects, studied the ripple effects of humanity's approach. Every civilization we've helped becomes more capable of helping others. We're not creating dependency. We're creating a network of species with advanced engineering capabilities and the experience to use them. The galaxy discovered that Deathworlder compassion took the form of overwhelming engineering solutions that didn't just help refugees. They gave them better lives than they'd had before the disasters that displaced them. Human humanitarian assistance eliminated refugee problems by building superior civilizations rather than managing ongoing crises. Elder Zephyr filed his final report to the Ethereal Council with a sense of wonder at what his desperate plea for help had unleashed. We asked for temporary shelter from extinction. We received permanent homes that exceed our greatest dreams. Humanity didn't just save us. They gave us a future better than our past. ***, the END****.